What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Cosmic Wonder, the finale of Daredevil Born Again Season 1, and the post-credit scene with the Punisher set up something big coming in Season 2. An army that Matt Murdock / Daredevil is going to have, or a resistance, as the Daredevil Born Again showrunner, Dario Scardapane, refers to it. And if you were like me, when Daredevil opened those doors at the end there in that final scene at Josie's, you were expecting some of the Defenders to be there. And maybe some other cameos as well. I certainly was expecting that and was a little disappointed when we didn't see it. However, hope has been restored, as the showrunner for Daredevil Born Again has basically confirmed, yes, some Defenders and some cameos are going to be in Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And what he said makes perfect sense and really does show me that he understands Marvel and the MCU as a concept really well. And it makes me really wonder about Spider-Man 4 after hearing what Dario Scardapane has to say about Season 2 and the Defenders and other cameos. It has me thinking it might almost be impossible for Spider-Man 4 not to address some of what has happened in Daredevil Born Again. On top of that, we do get a little bit of information about the Punisher special presentation, which he seemingly confirms is going to be coming before Daredevil Born Again. But let's start with the Defenders. As I mentioned, Dario Scardapane is the showrunner for Daredevil Born Again. And in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, they asked him specifically about the Defenders, stating, "With this final scene that we get with Matt and everybody in Josie's, people have been gravitating toward the line that he says about needing to assemble an army to take down Fisk. The first thing that pops into our heads is Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Danny Rand. Are those characters in your head as you map out Season 2 and the future of Daredevil?" And this is what he said. "Without giving too much away, when you're working in what I would call the Hell's Kitchen corner of the MCU, those iconic characters are always in your mind. The thing is that, and this is kind of hard, I'm trying to thread a needle here. You want to bring in people and relationships and past figures in Matt's life because they help the story, particularly in terms of a story where Fisk has taken over the city, and there is a resistance and a rebellion, so to speak, rising. So there's going to be people, vigilantes, superheroes that are involved in that. There has to be, because this is happening to their city." So there's more to this, but I want to pause right here to address what he just said. When referring to the resistance and the rebellion and the rising, he states there are going to be people, and we've already seen those people. We've seen the really good cops, we've seen Cherry, Agent Kim, and there's going to be more, but then he says vigilantes and superheroes are going to be involved with that. So not only just the Defenders, but superheroes as well, although you could classify some of them as superheroes, of course. But you wonder who else might appear, what other cameos could appear. Daredevil obviously knows who Spider-Man is, not necessarily that he's Peter Parker, but he knows of the superhero Spider-Man. We know that because of Spider-Man No Way Home. And even though we've kind of been told that Spider-Man isn't technically allowed to appear in live action and shows, there is always a possibility that Marvel and Sony could work that out, so it could happen. But we won't get our hopes up in the meantime. I do think this could affect Spider-Man 4, but we'll get to that in a minute. So basically, they have confirmed that at least one Defender is going to show up because they say that other vigilantes and superheroes are involved in this uprising, this resistance, this rebellion, and it makes sense that they would be involved. Story-wise, it just makes sense. But he continues. He says they get involved because this is happening to their city. That said, you also want to create a completely organic story for that. So who comes in and why has to be beyond anything earned. So the easiest answer to your question is yes, those characters that you just listed off are absolutely in my head and everybody's head as we're working. How that manifests itself is both really tricking writing-wise and a pretty closely guarded secret at this point. So I'm being intentionally cagey, but I'm also saying hell yeah in terms of it's something we're thinking about. And he did go on to say intentionally cagey isn't a reference to Luke Cage. But he basically did confirm the Defenders are coming back. He obviously just can't come out and say, hey, yeah, we're going to bring them back in Season 2. That's not how it works. Kevin Feige wouldn't like that. But he even said that it's their city too. And since we are in the MCU and it's all connected, it just makes sense to bring them in. And I know a lot of people have been saying and thinking, don't the Defenders think that Matt's dead? Well, he's been him out and about, since the Defenders, they know he's alive. His name, both Matt Murdock and Daredevil have been all over the TV, so they would have found out that he's alive. And the fact that they're taking so much care into figuring out how to bring them in story-wise makes me feel pretty confident about it. And again, it just really seems like Dario understands how the MCU works. And speaking of that, everything being connected, if Spider-Man 4 takes place at the same time as Avengers Doomsday, it would make sense that this story does bleed into the story of Spider-Man 4. And if it does, this might actually give some fans what they've really been wanting, kind of a street-level grounded story. Now, of course, if it is happening at the same time that Avengers Doomsday is happening and Spider-Man isn't in Avengers Doomsday, well, ultimately the end of Spider-Man 4 would be pretty big, especially if it results in the end of the multiverse, or perhaps some of the Avengers showing up and needing Spider-Man's help, or however they decide to do it. There are basically two options right now. Spider-Man 4 can be a story about Spider-Man after the events of Avengers Doomsday, what he is up to on Battleworld, or it could be like some rumors right now, nothing confirmed, but rumors state, which is it'll take place at the same time as Avengers Doomsday. There's pros and cons to each of these, but go ahead and let me know which one you would prefer in the comments down below. Now, like I mentioned, he did go on to talk a little bit about the Punisher special presentation. When they got into the interview, Entertainment Weekly said, let's start from the end of this episode and work our way backwards. Speaking of the finale, and they said, was the post-credits scene a direct response to the Punisher TV special that's in the works with Jon Bernthal? Dario Scardapane said this: no, it was part of a larger Marvel idea with regards to Jon, the Punisher, and keeping him in the world. Now, remember what he just said, keeping him in the world and the bigger, larger Marvel idea, because I'll get to it in a bit. He continues, he gets taken by the task force, and we didn't want to just have him sit on that island. We needed to give you an idea that Frank is not going to stay locked up for long. It came pretty late in the process, but it became very clear very quickly that this was the thing to do, both in terms of telling the story of Daredevil and what's going to come next for Frank and the Punisher. So clearly here they are talking about having Frank come back in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, keeping him in that story, keeping him in that world as a part of the larger story. I said remember that because they kind of are very vague about that in this next part. Entertainment Weekly asks, is it fair for an audience member to look at that post-credit scene and assume Frank is going to have some involvement in Daredevil Born Again Season 2? Again, he pretty much just confirmed, yes, that's part of the overall story of Frank to keep him there specifically, but then he says this, I don't know. I mean, I think that a lot of what would be fair to assume for an audience member is that post-credit sequence lays right into what the Punisher special is going to be. So according to the Daredevil Born Again showrunner, they specifically did that for the Punisher special presentation. So that's where it's going to pick up from. And if what he said before is true, they did that for the larger story and to keep him there, meaning to keep him there in the story for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, then that most likely means that the Punisher TV special is coming before Season 2. It'll show Frank escaping and doing some other stuff and then eventually meeting back up with Matt/Daredevil and the Resistance. So as far as Hell's Kitchen is concerned, there are a lot of exciting things coming up with Born Again Season 2, The Defenders, and The Punisher. Go ahead and let me know how excited you are for this in the comments down below. And don't forget to let us know what you think about Spider-Man 4's story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel news, rumors, or leaks. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.